It's the night of November 7th, 1942. German forces and their Vichy accomplices are on the hunt for Marie-Madeleine Foucault, the leader of the French resistance network called Alliance. Alliance have been the most successful intelligence gatherers in France. They've received millions in funding from MI6 and have provided London with vital information. The Germans have tracked down her villa just outside of Marseille. They smash their way in just as she finishes her transmission to London. After a struggle, Marie-Madeleine is carted off to a Vichy jail. She's under no illusions as to what her fate might be. Dozens of her agents have been tortured, killed, or sent to concentration camps. Is this the end for Marie-Madeleine and Alliance? Hello, darlings. This is Spies and Ties, a sub-series of World War II in real time, and I'm Astrid Deinhardt. Let's take a moment to look back at the story so far. Alliance began life in July 1940 under the command of a former French intelligence officer named Georges Lousdenot-Lacour. Fortunately for us, he has a much shorter codename, Navarre. Before the war, Navarre had worked on Philippe Pétain's staff and had moved in anti-communist, fascist-leaning circles. But when Pétain made an armistice with the Germans, Navarre felt betrayed by his former boss. He decided to resist. He convinced the Marshal to employ him as head of the Légion Française de Combattants, an organization devoted to helping demobilized veterans back into civilian life. At least that was its intended purpose. But, in fact, Navarre screened the veterans passing through Légion headquarters for anyone who might be useful for the resistance group he was building. The name of his group was Crusade. Its goal was to set up networks that would collect intelligence for the British. By December 1940, Crusade had 50 agents centered on Marseille. Next year, so April 1941, in neutral Lisbon, Navarre agreed a partnership with Commander Keith Cohen, commander of MI6 French section, the F section. Cohen was keen to work with Alliance. Why? Because they had infiltrated the Saint-Nazaire shipyard home of Grand Admiral Erich Raeder's U-boat. Then, the Anglo-French partnership is marked with a name change. Crusade becomes Alliance. Disaster strikes shortly afterwards. In July 1941, Navarre is arrested. It's a long story, but the Vichy regime has been closing in on him for a while and have already closed down La Légion. Back in May, Navarre escaped arrest in Algeria after he tried to engineer an anti-Vichy coup. Now he will spend the rest of the war in Mauthausen concentration camp. Enter Marie-Madeleine Foucault, codename Harrison or Hedgehog. She's been Navarre's second in command since everything started back in 1940. The two have been friends since the 1930s. In fact, before the war, she collaborated with Navarre in setting up a network of informants to smuggle German military intelligence out of the Reich. She's already been handling Alliance's day-to-day business. When the organization started off in Marseille, she recruited local businessmen and dock workers to keep an eye on the ships and cargoes coming in and out. Before his arrest, Navarre had called her the most valuable member of Alliance. He declared that she had the memory of an elephant, the cleverness of the fox, the guile of a serpent, the perseverance of a mole, and the fierceness of a panther. I'm sure that sounds even more impressive in French. She too has a very good relationship with Alliance operatives. She's been training them, providing them with money and food, and she often welcomes them for dinner at headquarters in Pau. To them, she is la patronne, the boss. Things aren't quite the same with the higher-ranking staff, though. Many of them are pretty conservative and aren't happy with the idea of serving under a woman. Foucade must be especially disconcerting to them. She's fiercely independent and likes driving fast cars and flying. She also has 2 children, who she sometimes goes for many months without seeing, and is separated but not divorced from her husband. Some of the doubters threaten to walk out, but after some heated discussions, Foucade convinces them to stay. She becomes the only woman who will ever lead a resistant organization in France. She still keeps her gender a secret from London, though. She signs off her transmissions with the anonymous codename POZ55. She quickly wins over the MI6 confidence with impressive intelligence scores. One of her finest is a detailed map supplied by the head of the Saint-Nazaire shipyard. Crucially, it shows the new-built U-boat pens. In return, Cohen showers Alliance with parachute drops of radio sets and huge stacks of cash. By the end of 1941, over 10 million francs have arrived by parachute and courier. This successful relationship means that when she does finally meet Cohen's deputy, Eddie Kaiser, in December 41 in Madrid, he quickly brushes aside his shock at her sex. Okay, so Alliance and MI6 are riding high into 1942. By now, Alliance have spies in every corner of France. They are specialists when it comes to ports. By late 42, they've infiltrated almost all ports and U-boat bases on the west coast of France, stretching from Bordeaux and La Rochelle in the southwest to Lorient, Saint-Nazaire and Brest in the northwest. A young dressmaker named Shrimp works near the German U-boat base at Saint-Nazaire. When the submarines come back from their missions, they dump on her a stack of tattered life jackets for mending. While Shrimp works, she listens to conversations and picks up on the movements of the boats. The sailors surely think nothing of her, but her information helps the Royal Navy sink several U-boats. In the south, the head of operations at La Rochelle and Bordeaux is a 24-year-old named Philippe Königswerther. He joins Alliance in September 42 after having escaped from German custody. His operatives in La Rochelle include one of the crane operators at the submarine base and the former mayor of the town. In autumn 42, Königswerther provides intelligence that will allow the British to carry out Operation Frankton in December. This is a commando raid in which a small group of Royal Marines paddling tiny kayaks will badly damage 6 vessels using limpet mines. But before this happens, the Germans strike. They've been closing in ever since they captured an Alliance operative in Strasbourg earlier. Under interrogation, he admitted that he was part of an intelligence network linked to Britain. He reveals that the group uses animal code names. The Germans begin referring to the group as Noah's Ark. Finally, the Germans strike on November 7th, 42. That's the night before Operation Torch. As I said in the beginning, Foucade is captured just after she finishes transmitting to London. But through a stroke of luck, she avoids the grim fate of so many of her agents. She's taken into custody by the Vichy police, and the officers she's held by are sympathetic to the resistance. They give Foucade a hot meal and go through the motions of interrogating her. Even better, a few days later, these officers secretly hand her back over to Alliance. It's disguised as a daring rescue by Alliance operatives. Foucault later arranges for these helpers to be flown to London for their safety. She sets up her new headquarters in Lyon in January. In the wake of the German occupation of the Zone Libre, the city has become the center of the German crackdown led by Klaus Barbie, the Gestapo's butcher of Lyon. Barbie spends the spring of 1943 torturing Alliance operatives. I mentioned two women named Hummingbird and Mouse in a previous video. They are subjected to electric shocks and beaten with riding crops. Barbie smokes as he works and stubs his cigarettes out on their bodies. He has no qualms about torturing children. A 13-year-old girl with parents in the resistance will later recall Barbie's savage grin as he subjects her to a week of threats and beatings. Alliance has by now reached a huge size with over 2,000 agents, couriers, and contacts across the country. It comes under vicious attack as cells are destroyed in Toulouse, Marseille, and Nice. New cells are set up in the south of France, but are attacked as quickly as they appear. In March, the Gestapo strike in Paris, capturing radio operators and couriers. Then in the town of Vichy, 35 operatives, 35, are captured, including Foucault's older sister. This is all part of a really horrendous summer for the French resistance. Spartacus covered the destruction of the Prosper circuit in War Against Humanity last month, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail. The long and short is the Prosper is an SOE network which has been responsible for sabotage operations and has received a great deal of weapons and money from London. By the end of June, though, the game is pretty much up. The Germans have Prosper leader Francis Sutil in custody, along with his second-in-command André Borel and Prosper's radio operator Gilbert Normand. At least one of them talks. We don't know who exactly, because none of them will survive the war. All the testimony will come from their Sicherheitsdienst captors, Hans Kiefer and Josef Placke. But we do know why they talk. There's a spy within Prosper named Henri de Ricourt. Since January, he's been passing on huge amounts of information about Prosper and SOE to the Germans. Kiefer uses his knowledge to convince his captives that SOE has been thoroughly infiltrated. Resistance is futile, and the agents might as well cooperate to save themselves and their colleagues. You know how people say history doesn't repeat, but that it rhymes? Well, in some cases, history does actually repeat itself. The Germans repeat one of their old counter-espionage tricks. Remember the Englandspiel, where the Abwehr used captured SOE radio operators to send back fake messages to London? Well, you can watch my video on MI6 and SOE tensions to hear all about it. But it doomed the resistance in the Netherlands. Now, with all this information about Prosper and with Normand and his radio set in their possession, it's time for round 2. This time it's called the Funkspiel, meaning radio game. The first message, purporting to be from Normand, is sent on July 7th. The message claims that Sutil has been captured, but that he, Normand, escaped capture. Just like in the Netherlands, SOE noticed the missing security checks from Normand's message. Remember, these are deliberate spelling mistakes and phrases inserted in a message to identify the operator in their absence. SOE should assume that the operative has been compromised and break off contact. But just like in the Netherlands, SOE brush this off and respond as normal. In fact, they send a friendly reminder to remember the security checks next time. When the Germans informed Normand of this, his morale collapses. Either SOE are hopelessly incompetent or they have been completely infiltrated by German agents. He decides to collaborate. This game also works on other captured SOE agents and French operatives. Normand reportedly tells one of his fellow prisoners, "You can tell them everything. They are stronger than we are." Many of them do just that. So begins the crushing of the circuit linked to Prosper. Donkeyman, Bricklayer, Chestnut, Butler, Priest, those are the names of just some wiped out in summer and autumn of 43. SOE are pretty much down and out. Meanwhile, things are getting ever more dangerous for Foucault. While Prosper are being wrapped up, there's a new wave of arrest. Foucault's chief of security is arrested shortly before he's due for a meeting at Allianz News headquarters in Paris. Foucault thinks a traitor in the ranks is responsible. It's too dangerous for her to remain in France, so she reluctantly flies to London in July. MI6 quite wisely have whiskey and coffee waiting on board. She will command Allianz from London for another year. Eddie Kaiser and Keith Cohen will give her their full support. Let's take a minute to look at the bigger picture here, though. The French resistance is supposed to be playing a big part in the preparation for the invasion of Europe, right? The Allies need eyes and ears on the ground and people ready to commit sabotage. But right now, what resistance is there? Prosper has been destroyed. Foucault has been forced to flee. Spartacus told you all about John Moulin's capture too, right? By the end of 43, the Germans will have arrested somewhere in the region of 400 SOE agents. This is along with French resistance operatives and civilians who have hidden arms and radio transmitters. The Allies have been trying to get ahead of the curve for almost 3 years now. Now their progress is being wiped out. How can they possibly rebuild everything in time for next year? If you'd like to learn more about the German occupation of France and the complex origins of the French resistance, you can go back to one of Spartacus' early War Against Humanity videos. Click here. For that, I don't know where it is. To get ever more content like this, join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. And I will see you next time, darlings.